Back again with Simon Coulson, and we are today talking about Built Not Bought on Retro Ride podcast number 4. Hello Simon, how are you doing?
I'm alright, thank you very much. Good to hear you. See you.
Well, indeed. Are we ready for a full and frank discussion about Built Not Bought? And
I don't know.
Whatever that means. Unbelievably frank.
Okay, we'll go for it. Yeah, let's be frank.
I'll be David. So, the discussion came up partly because of something Simon mentioned whilst talking to him previously, and things that float around my brain, and the whole way that the retro thing is going. We're getting more people coming in that have perhaps got a little bit more money, and they're getting their cars built for them, and then some people are getting a bit sniffy about that, and it's a weirdly controversial topic for people that like cars. So I thought we'd tackle it here. We've got a bunch of questions in the forum, but I'm gonna define for myself what I think it means, and then I'm going to see what Simon thinks it means. So, to my mind, Built Not Bought is the difference between getting a car built to your specification, however that is done, whether or not you do that all nut and bolt in the garage, or whether or not you farm that out to other people to do. And the other side of the coin is people that see a very well put together car, a very nice show car, for example, and then just buy it. The whole Barrett Jackson auction type thing. So Troy Trepanier will build a car for someone to their specifications, and then they take it to Barrett Jackson, and somebody else buys that car and then takes it to the shows and wins the prizes. So that's what I think it is.
You're saying if I go to a professional builder and have a car built for me, if it was for me, it's still a built car and not a bought car.
That's how I think of it. Which may be wrong as far as some people are concerned. So what you sound surprised. So I'm curious to see what you think of it.
Yeah, no, well, I'm going built versus bought, with built being a guy in his garage doing everything to it and building stuff, and actually, starting with a base car and making something totally different with it, versus someone who takes their car to a professional and has it built for them, but someone else built it, or indeed someone who just buys a finished car, buys a car from the show circuit, or buys a magazine feature car. So anything other than the guy getting his hands dirty, being the actual owner of the car, is bought.
See, the reason I can't think of it that way is because there's very few people that have done every last thing on their car.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Like, once you get into paint or specialist ECU setup and all this stuff, someone has gone to someone else to do bits. And then there's this weird dividing line. It's like, well, I did all of the welding myself, but I took it to somewhere to get painted. Or I did all the painting myself, but I got someone to tune my engine for it. Like, well, where upon that continuum does it turn?
I suppose the relevance here is whether people are seeing the bought term as derogatory or not. I've got a lot of respect for people who build their own cars, but I don't really have any snobbishness about someone who's just paid money, especially if it's their ideas. So you don't have to really make these distinctions unless someone somewhere is being a snob and looking down on someone else. So I don't think anyone has a problem. It's interesting, isn't it? Is you can build a whole car and take it out for upholstery, which seems to be just accepted. Even the top builders are taking their stuff out for as if upholstery, and that's just accepted. Or a lot of people do everything apart from the paint. But then again, who's casting their own engine blocks? There has to be a line at every point, doesn't there? When we're building a car, are we building a car with a chassis we bought from the States and had sent over? Are we using a suspension kit that someone else made? I suppose if we have to draw that line, it's nearly impossible to draw it. I think what we should just do is draw a line under all of it and not have any negativity, and realise that, if you're having something built, then someone else is earning money from what's probably their hobby. I don't know. I think it's the negativity that's the problem here.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised at your definition, to be honest.
I think because for my world, I find that people definitely look down on people that don't do the majority of stuff on their car. So let's say that built in the general accepted term is that they've done the majority of the work. So,
Yeah.
but there's definitely I feel a sense of negativity towards people that haven't done that, even though they are out there providing jobs to professionals and still a car enthusiast and putting money into the industry and in many ways supporting a number of other car enthusiasts.
Yeah.
But I can also see that the flip side. You got people like Nightmares Racing who takes his car, takes it apart and rebuilds it and does all the spray work and all that kind of stuff, and turns out these cars every year, every couple of years. And then you got people like me who have their car and very slowly take it to various people to get various things done on it, and then fiddle about with it and break it myself and then take it to someone else to get it fixed.
Yeah.
And we're not quite opposite ends of the spectrum, because I think there's a level beyond me, probably people that have a little bit more money that can just take their car to Retro Power and say, right, what I want is this.
I'd do that if I could.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I'd do it if I could, but but I still think of that as built. I think they're different ends of the continuum, and I think there's definitely, you can have a certain level of, when you look at a car that someone's built themselves, pretty much all of it, then you kind of go, I respect you as a technical builder for that. But I don't think the end result, the car at the end of it, is any less a car if someone just took it to various places to get done. I do have definite issue with people buying somebody else's show car and then showing it round and winning prizes, because it's a weird thing to me. It's a weird thing to go, I've seen this car and I like it, and I'm going to take it to shows and I'm going to enter it into competition. Like, but it wasn't your idea. Like, that your investment in it is purely ownership. And I find that odd.
Yeah, but I mean, if that car gets to a certain age and you're showing it as with historical significance.
Oh yeah,
then that's something. And not only that, it means that probably the guy that built the car is off building the next one. And if you've got a show car, then you shouldn't leave it tucked away in the garage, should you? I think the biggest problem comes in a lot of these circumstances is if someone is lying about who built it, or someone is not telling the truth about who built it. So if someone bought a really cool hot rod and then brought it into this country, for instance, they bought it in the States and brought it over here and then put it on show, I want to see the car. The car isn't any worse for not having the original builder as the owner. It's a good car nonetheless. If I'm judging a show, admittedly, if there was two guys that built exactly the same car, that would be down a few points anyway. But if they did, if one of them did all the work themselves and one of them paid to do it, even though I'm absolutely for people paying to have their cars done, I'd probably err on the side of the guy who built everything himself. That would mean something. But I don't know. We've had this as judges at a show where we've seen a car that's clearly the best car at the show and think, can we just give the same car the award every year?
Yeah.
Does the owner make any difference as well? If we're judging cars and we're not being, as some people say happens, whenever there's authority involved or something, cliquey, if you're choosing it just on the car, then none of these things should come into matter. You should look at it and you should go, yeah, that's the best car at this show. Not say that's the best car at this show, but I saw it last year, or that's the best car at the show, and this doesn't sound right at all. Not voting for it because it's changed ownership and the guy who's bought it didn't build it or didn't pay to build it. That doesn't make sense at all. Good car is a good car.
That's an interesting thing to think of in terms of judging. I mean, the case in point for anybody that's listening is Dean's Lotus, his fantastic Lotus. Every year that comes to the gathering, it might as well just win Car of the Year as far as I'm concerned. And he changes it every year. But it's already won Car of the Year. And it's very hard as a judge to just repeatedly give the same car the prize, even though in many regards it probably should just win Car of the Year every year until
It's
someone
the
builds
best
a better car.
It's the best car, isn't it?
In our opinion, maybe, but I think.
Well, not necessarily my opinion, but
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying.
But that's the thing. Like, so the reason we have like judging as a group is because otherwise I could theoretically just give it to that car every year. But which isn't to take away from the cars that have won it, because actually on searching around the field, you do find cars that are better, but for different reasons. I think that, and I think that's maybe judging wise, that's one of the interesting things that you kind of. You actually don't take into account, really, thinking about it, who built the car or where it came from. So from that point of view, our judging is fairly built, not bought agnostic, mainly because often we don't really know much about the cars. Like the Lada that won the year before last.
Dave College's.
I no knowledge about what the history of that car was or anything about it, but I saw that it was a very, very clean Lada with a Ford engine in it, put in there beautifully. So, and it just was really the best thing on the field once I'd taken
now, and that's an interesting case. I can't say I know everything about the car, but to my knowledge, that's built at, what's the name of the guy's Retro Ford, I think?
Retro Ford, yeah. Yeah, it's Retro Ford.
Yeah, I think so. But, so, that car is professionally built in a professional shop, but by its owner. So, how does that work?
Yeah.
Do we start taking points off for our theoretical judging here? Do we start taking points off because the owner has got access to really nice facilities? And I say, no, we wouldn't do that. But then maybe I would give people a little bit of an extra point if I knew it was built on a lock-up without power. That's where, I don't know, there's a hypocrisy in all of it, isn't it? Where we're trying to judge a car, and I don't know quite why we seem to be focusing on judging at the moment.
But
it's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, it's where our interaction with this kind of thing is from a more objective point of view, because personally, I don't really care if someone bought all of the bits for their car, like from someone else, someone went and got it made. But I do think there's people out there that do care. I think there's definitely people that get very sniffy about whether or not someone is doing all the nut and bolt restoration or whatever it is themselves. And I think it's not. But then I think maybe we're in a situation where, because we're not necessarily builders in inverted commas, I'm not going to strip cars down to engine blocks and rebuild them and do all the welding myself. That perhaps to us it's not so much of a problem, whereas to them, slaving in their garage week after week, trying to get their car back together, perhaps it is. They drive it to somewhere and then everyone's falling over something that somebody got somebody else to build for them. You could kind of understand the frustration a little bit, but but that's where you take your enjoyment in the hobby. Like for me, having the car is the enjoyment. For other people, building the car is the enjoyment. You get all those people that build their cars and then sell them a month after they finish them, and then start building the next one. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were going to be on exactly the same side here for this. It was going to be like a bit of a one-sided conversation in that neither of us are really against the bought philosophy, but obviously your opening statement meant that we weren't necessarily on the same side. But I think that you need money in a hobby, or it should be there somewhere if people are going to be able to do it properly. So people should pay to have things built. I just think, back to a point earlier, honesty is a really important factor in it. In that, you shouldn't do that. And also, what value do you put on ideas above physical work? Because I could have an idea of a base car that no one else has ever thought of, and think of the best wheels to put on it, and think of an engine swap that no one's done before, and I could even get a pen and paper out and draw the car I want, and then hand all of these details and perhaps even the parts that I've already bought to a good builder and have it built. And who should be taking the credit for that? I haven't actually got my hands dirty in any way, but it's all my ideas. And even maybe I could even have some of the engineering solutions, but I can't weld. So I could potentially say, I built that, and then someone else could say, but I saw it in Thingy's workshop over there, and he built it. And you, I don't know. It's a weird argument to have, isn't it? I've essentially had all the best bits about the car, apart from maybe the quality of finish. But even then, my money paid for that quality of finish.
Yeah, I think that actually that comes on to the question that Full Tramp asked in a sort of a paragraph long question. But basically, he's saying that if someone hasn't got the expertise to build a car, kind of should they? Like, is there a point at which actually it would be better that somebody did buy in the expertise rather than attempt to do it themselves?
People should know their limits.
Yeah, and I think
should know what they can do and can't do.
I think there's definitely that. I think that whilst I've got a lot of respect and admiration for people that can build cars, and particularly people that can build them well in their single lockup. I think that you have to be certainly realistic with yourself to know either that you want to give something a try and it hasn't worked out, so you need to take it to someone and get it sorted out, or to know that you'll do that on the next car you build, and this car you'll get it done, because there's, whilst you've got a lot of respect for people that build cars to a high quality, you actually lose a lot of respect for people that do the opposite, where they build the car to a very low quality because they don't know what they're doing. And there's, again, nothing wrong with learning to work on cars and do that, but it's knowing your limits. It's not trying to necessarily, to me at least, it's not trying to do things that you can't do and then sort of half-arse a car, because ultimately it will impact everyone else if you then subsequently crash that car and they find out that you're working on this stuff at home, and it will impact us as hobbyists if more and more people start to do this, which, the thing is, you look at some of the builds from the Street Machine era, and even some of the magazine feature cars were fairly ropey.
Yeah, well, I think if you bought a car out the back of the classifieds of Street Machine in, I don't know, 1988, for instance, if you built a hot rod, it's probably going to drive awfully, and you're going to have a bad back, and it's going to fall apart and things quite quickly. And I think there is a strange line between people clever enough to know they can't build a car and people stupid enough to think they can. I wouldn't build a suspension system. I'd think, oh yeah, that's good. But another guy could read Street Machine, say, oh, I love this double wishbone setup's great, and off they go into the garage and weld something up. And you could say to them, what are you doing about the Ackerman angle? And they'll go, the what? And you just think, oh, that's why I'm not building this thing, because I didn't know enough about that, and you didn't even know that thing existed when you built the car. But sometimes people are going in the garage without having the faintest idea what they're doing and still turning out something good. And where do people look at build threads and have questions about it and say, oh, this build thread, this guy's done this bad thing, he's done bad welding, or he's not notched a tube right, or something like that. Who officially gets to judge that? I've seen, and over time, there's another thing on a forum, something that someone might have been doing 15 years ago, that they might not be doing anymore. They might be in a place to judge now, where they were in a place to be judged earlier, and yet their work is still there as their work. I don't know. It's maybe everyone should just have everything paid, just pay professionals to do it. And everyone should be checking their qualifications and their insurance.
But exactly, where do the paid professionals come from? They come from people working in a garage. I mean, you're not going to say that someone like John Beardmore can't build a car, but he does it on his own in his lockup at home. And that's true. Peter Pental with that crazy superpowered Lancia thing, he learnt to build that car. Like, that's his car. That's his first car. Yeah, that's insane. That's...
Well, I mean, in some respects, it is. It's what's their first car like compared to their last car. And do we allow a learning curve? I know that I did some pretty dodgy stuff when I was younger. In fact, I'm not much better now, if I'm honest. I don't know. There is this time thing that comes into it as well. And also, what about when you pay someone to do it and they don't do it as well as you could have done, and that's why you were paying someone?
Don't. It's fine. It's fine. Just a flesh wound. But yeah, I see what you mean. I think that the worry then is the prestige of having built your own car, kind of forces people into doing stuff they're not necessarily comfortable with or ready to do. And to a point, that's fine because that's how you learn stuff. I've run out of knowledge, skill, and talent with my front suspension, but I gave it a go up until a certain point. And luckily, I have a forum of people that are happy to help. And once I've regained some mojo, I will send off some parts to some people to do some machining. And in fact, that's Johnny Bravo, who is a lovely chap. I know that I've reached my limit, and that when I screwed it all back together, I was like, yeah, this isn't working. And I could have sort of jerry-rigged it a bit more, but I was like, this isn't right, this isn't good. And I'm happy to give that to someone else and go, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think that if you pressure people too much into trying to be purely built by themselves, you could end up with some dangerous cars on the road.
No, I agree. And not only that, it's when people are talking, we don't want IVA, we don't want things tested. Maybe we should have. Maybe that's exactly what we need.
That's exactly what we need.
Maybe when we talk about, potentially someone, I think the example in Ford de Tramp's thing here is the Land Rover that ended up going off the side of the road because it had mismatched calipers.
Yeah.
IVA probably would have stopped that.
It would definitely have stopped that.
Yeah. But then you could do repair work that you definitely don't, and get that horribly wrong as well. You could not do your wheel nuts up after you've lowered your car.
I know that'd be a ridiculous thing to repeatedly not do your wheel nuts up and then have your wheels fall off.
Sorry about that.
Some sort of idiot. But the
we all do it.
Well, I do. I did it again the other day. But the I think the IVA test is an odd one because it tests not quite enough as far as I'm concerned, and a little bit too much of things that I don't care about. But it's a test for, it is what it is. I think it's a difficult, the testing stuff's a difficult argument because you want people to be safe, but you also want people to have the freedom to try things. He says that like he wants to try square wheels or something, or running no brakes. But is you want them to be legitimately usable on the road, but you don't want to curtail things so much. Like the whole having TUV registered parts and all that stuff you have to have in Germany. That they still have a modifying scene that works. They still have a very good hot rod scene and all sorts of things. Yeah. They have to jump through hoops to get it all. I'm sure there's more than a few cars that are out there running illegally. But I think that the principle of having good quality finish is there, and I think these things should be tested and MOT'd and IVA'd if they need to be. Yeah. But they need to make that as accessible and transparent as possible, which they're kind of getting to now. And I think with more cars going through it, it starts to become a little bit less scary. We've got a few guys on the forums that have put cars through. And we know people that are building cars, and they've said at the beginning, this is going to have to be IVA'd. So I just need to know what's going to be tested so I can get it right. And that
should be something you're proud of, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The whole Q plate thing's a pain in the arse. I get that you want age-related plates, or you don't want a Q plate, but I think that's a small price to pay for having what should hopefully be relatively safe cars on the road. Again, it's not perfect, so the argument is always, well, it's not a true test of quality, but it's at least a mark that your car is unlikely to kill you.
Suddenly veer off to the side of the road and kill nuns and kittens.
Yeah, in the next 5 minutes at least. So
should we next question? Shall we?
Oh, that's the no, that's all good. That's the Mad Max. Good. If people are paying others to restore cars and then trying to sell them at outrageous prices, is it ruining the hobby? And Mad Max believes it's true, and Igor likes it as well. He said yes in all capital letters, 3 capital letters. YES. Yeah. Yes. I kind of don't think that is ruining the hobby. Sorry to disagree. I think that having your car professionally restored to a perfect standard for a not insignificant sum of money, and then selling it for a not insignificant sum of money, is a whole different level of car ownership to what 99% of classic and retro people do. I think
Yeah.
the problem
I'm not even sure it's happening. I don't know. I think there was a time in the 80s, wasn't there, when you could buy a Mark II Jag and have it restored and still make enough money to move it on. But restoration is an expensive thing. So
really
if you're talking about actual restoration, I don't think that people buying, as they used to do back in the 80s or the 90s, buy any old Beetle out of your local paper, paint it peppermint and sell it on as a cow look after putting some filler on it and a set of MPs. I don't think that's a good thing. I think that people buying cars and then badly restoring them and selling them on a profit, that's not good for the hobby.
Yeah, I don't think that's good for the hobby at all.
But churning out, spending an enormous amount of money with a restorer who's employing people and doing a good job, and then selling the car on to someone who wants a really car, how can that possibly be a bad thing? That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that it's this whole profit motive thing, which kind of goes into another, not tangentially related, I guess, aspect of this whole thing, which is people buying cars to sell at a profit. So
yeah.
they'll see a car on
like a car dealer.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah.
So they see a car on Facebook or in their local free ads or even on Retro Rides, and they'll buy it for £500, and maybe they slap an MOT on it, or maybe they don't. But then they sell it to someone else for £1,000 or £1,500, having tidied it up a little bit or even done nothing.
Yeah.
And people rant and rave about that, and the problem is that's to me that's kind of legit. It's a pain in the arse if you wanted to buy that car and you didn't.
Yeah.
But if someone's willing to spend £1,500 on a car you spent £500 on, then that's just kind of market forces at work. And sometimes it sucks because it means you can't afford the car you want. I, for example, am very unlikely to own a Porsche. But because they keep on going up in price. Like, as my spending power has increased, the prices of Porsches have increased, but more than double what my spending power has. So, it's unlikely I'll ever be able to buy one. At least not one that I could necessarily keep for very long. But I think that that can be a problem, and also the whole thing that you were saying previously, that you have these cars that when you were younger, you think of them being a price. So you think of, a Ford Escort. You think that's like a good quality one's about $2,000. But that's not what a good quality Escort is now. Mark 1, Mark II Escort is not $2,000 anymore.
No, but so my bay window van, I think that's the story you're referring to. When I bought my bay window van, is I was walking around it, and my mind was going, look, an £800 van, an £800 van, before I then knocked him down to 5,000.
Yeah.
Which hurt a lot. But the thing that people don't get, and I actually will, as most people listening are forum people anyway, they know what I'm talking about if we talk about a post from KGF. There's currently a Cosworth for sale, a 3-door Cosy in the classifieds of Retro Rides, and it's up for nearly £100,000. Now, a lot of people have come on and gone, oh, it's nearly £100,000. It's outrageous. But it's actually, I think it's got like 5,000 miles on the clock.
Yeah.
But you have to remember, especially people who are old enough to moan about knowing how much they used to be, and Cosworth's never really been that cheap. There's been a bottom level for them, but they've never got down to the price of just a normal Sierra might have done. It's people have to remember is if you're looking at it and saying, I remember when they were, I don't know, £3,000, then that was your opportunity to buy it, and you didn't. So things might change, and you might have been a 17-year-old wishing you could buy a Cosworth, which means that now you're a 40-year-old and you might be able to buy a Cosworth, which is why all the other 40-year-olds that suddenly have got a bit of spare money to buy a Cosworth are all fighting for these fewer and fewer Cosworths that are left. And that's why the price is going up. It's because people love these cars. And the great thing is given this information, is we can be buying the cars that we like now, or predicting the cars that we'll like in 30 years' time or 20 years' time or whatever. It's not like the market's unfair here. You can go and buy that car that someone else bought and sold for more. You can go and buy that car that will be worth a load of money in the future.
Yeah.
if you know enough to moan about it, you own it. You know enough to be on the inside of this car market thing, to not moan about it, but to use it, to go out there and buy a Focus ST or whatever it is turns young people on at the moment, and they'll like later.
I think that there's been a few surprises. I think that the VW, the split screen camper vans going nuts, was a surprise for a lot of people, and I think the rise in Porsche prices certainly is odd, because they're not very good. No, it's not true.
No, it's because they were already fetching good money, and then suddenly they were a load more. They used to be a cheap Porsche,
and they're now the same money as proper supercars, which is insane. Because as previously discussed in a thread on Retro Rides, they're not really proper supercars. They're very nice, and they have like. I think partly because they have the iconic shape that there's things like the 935, which is a proper supercar. That's an insane machine, the 930 and the 935s.
Oh yeah, but Porsche, you're supposed to buy a Porsche and use it. You're supposed to Porsches, when they're new, unless there's some special edition or something, or some really special edition, they get sold to some guy who's using it as a company car for
and the thing is that in that regard, they're kind of in the sporty Jag territory, although obviously sporty Jags are slightly less well made, and there's other thing. But the weird thing about the Porsches and the camper van is that they're contemporaries. So like Bedford and Commerce and all this stuff, they're still bargain basement, and then the camper van is ridiculous prices, and the contemporaries of the Porsche.
You're talking about sort of maybe a Reliant Scimitar or something. Is what that company car buyer might have, like, who wanted a high-end car and really thought about his purchase. He might have bought a Reliant Scimitar.
The only thing that I could find that really is the equivalent of the Porsche 911 when it came out, and now that has a similar price, is the Ferrari 308 GT4, because it's a four-seater and it's but it's a Ferrari, and the prices of Ferraris are always ludicrous. And that's kind of, I think that's the thing that's given the impression that these markets are artificially inflated. And the same with the Escort, like the demand for Escort stuff is artificially inflated the market. But that's kind of par for the course. I think it's ruining the retro scene in so much as you won't get as many people just buying one of those things and doing something insane with it. You will get more people buying them and keeping them nice and keeping them fresh, and that's fine, because then you just have to move on to something else, and you go and buy a Comma instead of a camper van. Although Citroen H vans are now crazy money as well, which is a knock-on effect, I think, of the split screens. So, Mad Max question, I can see where his point would be, but I don't think it's happening in large numbers. I think there's a perception it happens in large numbers because you see something like KGF Classics will have a very nicely turned out car, very well photographed, a lot of detail about it, and they slap a big price tag on it, and that's their business, and they sell cars. Like, that's the market, and they sell them. But that's not every one of those cars, and it's just the ones you remember. You go, oh bloody hell, do you remember that? I don't know, the SO 23 or whatever the hell it is, the 43, the Westphalias in the auctions in the States that sold for upwards of £100,000. Like, that's mental, but
I think I was talking about this. I've actually got a friend who's selling a very expensive split screen camper van with the best of everything at the moment. We were talking about his potential buyer, and his potential buyer is perhaps someone who buys supercars and has got a little spot in the corner of their garage they'd like to fill with something that they just always liked, which is why I think a lot of these car collectors, whilst they might have pools of Ferraris or even Mustangs, they've often got a little Fiat 500 in the corner or something. Now, they might have paid a massive amount. They might have paid £50,000 to buy the best Fiat 500 that they could buy, but they might have just bought it on a whim as it came through the auction when they were looking at buying a multi-million-pound Ferrari. So what seems like big money to us is potentially small money to someone else, and they are, in some respects, outliers. And what they also mean, I've got friends with split screen camper vans who have really got no intention of selling them, but when they do, it's going to be to get a deposit for their children's houses or something like that. That's not a bad thing, is it? If they paid £4,000 for a bus that they imported themselves or something, and now it's worth 30, I don't know. I think they're smiling about it.
Yeah, I think so. I think, but it is definitely a function of time. I mean, I remember when you could buy an Aston Martin DBS for about $8,000, and you certainly can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's like the worst Aston Martin ever made. But but you know, it is what it is. But it's still an Aston Martin. It's still got the brand appeal. Everything goes through these prices. I think that there are just some cars that don't. And I think that there's, and they kind of give a weird impression of it. But we tend to live in the world of cars that don't. But then there's other cars that inflate and then deflate. Like you look at the price of Beetles, they went up, and then everyone kind of went, "No, it's insane spending $8,000 on this." So now they're kind of back at a more reasonable level, and they kind of some of the rarer stuff goes up for crazy money, but it's not across the board. You can still buy a Beetle for a reasonable price, but not £300 like you used to. It's it's a level price for what, and they'll gradually go up as time goes on.
But you can still buy a 20-year-old Beetle for £1,000.
Yeah,
it just happens to have the engine at the wrong end.
Yeah.
But you can buy a 20-year-old whatever you like for not much money.
Yeah.
But in 20 years' time, we'll be saying, "Oh, I remember when these were cheap." But of course, they were 20 years younger.
Yeah.
There's less of them, and the markets, the buyers are different. Yeah, there's always been cheap cars. There'll always be cheap cars. Well, short of some crazy revolution in car stuff.
But, well, that happened. Yeah. But hopefully not soon. So we got about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to go back to SB's question. I would just say that we kind of touched on Phoenix Capri's question. Around IVAs and whether or not we think they need them previously. So we weren't ignoring his question. But SB and Hillbilly would want to know what crazy builds we've got in our head. He said he personally has different ideas every week. And I can sympathise with that. So I'm gonna throw that to you because I'm gonna steal one of your ideas unless you do it first.
Is that right? No, well, really, apart from the crazy build that's going on at the moment, which is a disco camper van thing, but that's almost out of the car world and into something else. The build I'd actually discussed with someone while we were down at the awards at the Haynes Museum the other day, and I realised how near the top of my list it was. You know, if I was going to come into some money at the moment, what would I do? And it would probably be a Bond Equip. That's I've got a lot of love for Triumph Heralds, and Bond Equips are a little bit rarer and a bit more stylish at times, and they don't seem to command massively higher prices than the equivalent Triumph Herald. So I'd get myself a Bond Equip, and I'd probably paint it grey and maybe black all the trims, and maybe even put a Herald bonnet on it, and literally have it so it scraped the floor as you drove it. It would be so close to the floor that it would be almost undrivable, and then just a noisy but not very big engine, really, just so I could whiz about on it and feel cool.
That's nice for that. I think
that's not that crazy, is it?
That's not that crazy. I think the one I'm stealing from you, because I keep on coming back to it, is the UVA Fugitive, but done in a Resto Cal style. So all the right wheels and paint the roll cage like proper kind of heritage VW colours, and I don't know houndstooth or interior of some kind, like all of the touches, everything. Perhaps just right. All of the Resto Cal dials, suitably tuned up engine, and all that stuff. And I think that would be actual magic, and slammed to the floor as well. Obviously,
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I'd love to see
and
it.
if someone would like to build that for us, that would be grand. I'm happy to go for built not bought by proxy. Like just someone build that car because I want to see it. I don't necessarily want to build it myself.
You'll still claim it. And I'll claim it.
Well, you're claiming it. It's your idea.
There's a load of people claiming it.
I stole it from you. I always want to build also pretty much everything you draw in the back of Classic Ford. You're a very bad influence on me.
Sorry.
That's fine. It's fine. On the flip side, I literally just purely want to buy the Rocket Bunny 6666 Customs Nissan Cedric H130, which sits outside their shop being completely unloved at the moment. It was one of those...
Is that the burgundy one?
Yes, that sits on low, wide slot mags. That car is it's not on its slot mags anymore. It just sits outside their shop with a bit of tarp over some of it, looking sorry for itself. And I would like to go up to Murasan and put some money in his hand and bring that home and give it some love. So that would be literally a bought car. That'd be interesting. So what car would you literally be able to buy? Like, what modified car would you go, I will just give you some money for that and drive that to a show?
I don't know. I'd buy anything that Rothwell built. Any Dave Rothwell car would be mine. And that would put me in that thing where I'd be that guy turning up at a show in someone else's car and going, look at this car someone else built. But I think if I was open about it, and it's a car people say, I mean, we had a Rothwell car at the first Prescott gathering. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
No.
Yeah. It was the first or second. No, it's the first Prescott gathering. That was that.
Yeah. And that was a great car, and I cared who built it, but I also cared who owned it because I was jealous of them. So, yeah, I'd do that. I've still got a top 10 list of old street machine cars that I'd love to own, and my lottery win involves, as I've spoken to you about before, like a Haynes Museum type of museum, but with it completely full of old magazine featured cars, be it from Fast Car or Max Power or Street Machine or Custom Car or Hot Rod or any of them, or Chrome and Flames, just any old custom car or feature car that I could find. And I'd have the magazine spread in front of each one of them, explaining what it was and saying, this was the old Max Power Carlton, which they put 3 spokes on, and just, that would be awesome. That would be my dream garage.
Yeah,
and maybe I should set up a Kickstarter.
Let's do that. Quick, Kickstarter.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Retro
That's
Rides.
my dream build. A custom museum.
Retro Rides Custom Museum. Brilliant.
Yes.
Let's do it. I think for me, I go for. I'm looking around my room at the moment. I think probably outside of Murasan's car, because I'd actually need to work on that to get it back up to spec. I think probably Troy Trepanier's chicane thing, the one of his early builds. I'm a big fan of that.
That seems like a late one to me. I would go with Bumungous.
Yeah, no, see, I prefer the chicane. I also very, very much like the 32 Ford he did that won the Riddler award somewhere along the line. It's green with kind of cream wheels, and it's just lovely. And the wheels look like they're from a French car rather than an American hot rod. It's just super.
That's a good car.
So I think if I had to buy rather than build, I would go for that. Although, being as we are, I would probably take the money it would cost to get that and build something else that I wanted.
I think so. Yeah, because you don't want to. I'm currently driving around in a car that the little Fiesta, which other people had significantly more build in than I did, even though there's not much done to it. And I don't really enjoy it. I love driving the car and I like the car, but when people say, wow, those wheel trims look great, I always find myself thinking, I didn't put them on.
Yeah.
I would have done, and but I can't take credit for it. I just have to go, yeah, they do look good, don't they? But I'd rather go, oh, they were really hard to find and I'd had the idea for ages, but I can't say that because I didn't. Although I did have the idea, it wasn't me that did it.
No.
Which is another thing about stuff like that. Go out and build stuff before someone else does.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway from all of this is whatever it takes, go away and build something rather than sit indoors thinking about building it if you can.
If you need to spend money or put time into it, whatever, just do it.
Yeah, just go out and build it. So I think we are pretty much time up. We've got apparently about 20 seconds left.
Is that right?
And then we just finish.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's, everything just stops. But so yeah.
Have you worked out how to finish a podcast?
No.